It was supposed to be just another day for a royal guard, but when a thug tried to throw a punch at an old war veteran, things took a wild turn. What he didn't know? A royal guard was watching. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue this amazing story, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. The royal guard on duty cut an impressive figure. Suddenly, a loud voice shattered the peaceful atmosphere like a stone through glass. "Hey, you there, in the fancy hat!" The crowd parted, revealing a man stumbling forward. His disheveled appearance and slurred speech marked him as trouble from the start. The thug emerged from the crowd, swaying slightly with a half-empty bottle clutched in one hand, his bloodshot eyes fixed on the guard with disdain. "What's the matter, mate? Too good to look at me?" The guard's training kicked in as he faced this unexpected challenge. Tourists began to shift uncomfortably, unsure how to react to this sudden disruption of their idyllic scene. "I'm talking to you, soldier boy," the thug growled, his words growing more aggressive with each passing moment. "Think you're better than the rest of us, don't you?" Onlookers exchanged worried glances, some pulling their children close. A few brave souls inched towards the palace gates, hoping to alert someone to the escalating situation. The air crackled with unspoken tension as the standoff continued. "What's it gonna take to get a reaction out of you, eh?" the thug taunted, taking another swig from his bottle. "Maybe I should give that gun of yours a try. Bet that'd make you move?" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Parents shielded their children's eyes, while others fumbled for their phones, torn between calling for help and recording the unfolding drama. Just then, an elderly man stepped forward, his weathered face set in determination. The medals pinned to his jacket identified him as a veteran. "That's enough, son," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "You've had your fun. Now it's time to leave these good people alone." The thug's attention shifted. "And who do you think you are, old man?" "This ain't your fight." The veteran stood his ground. "I've fought in wars you couldn't imagine. I'm telling you now, this isn't a path you want to go down." The thug's face contorted with rage. He took a menacing step towards the veteran, fists clenching at his sides. The crowd held its breath, sensing that a line was about to be crossed. In a shocking turn of events, the thug suddenly lunged forward, his fist swinging wildly towards the veteran's face. Time seemed to slow as the collective gasp of the onlookers filled the air, but the punch never landed. In a blur of motion, the royal guard sprang into action. With precision born of years of training, he stepped between the thug and the veteran, deflecting the blow with a swift movement of his arm. The thug stumbled back, shock written across his face as he realized what had just happened. The guard stood tall, his eyes now locked onto the aggressor with an intensity that made the man shrink back. The crowd held its collective breath as an unexpected voice cut through the tension. A man stepped forward, his bearing calm and resolute. Unlike the disheveled appearance of the thug, this newcomer stood tall, his posture a testament to years of discipline and service. "That's enough," the man said, his voice carrying a quiet authority that seemed to command attention. The crowd's eyes shifted from the guard to this unexpected intervener, curiosity and hope mingling in their expressions. The veteran's presence seemed to shift the atmosphere. Where moments ago there had been fear and uncertainty, now there was a palpable sense of relief. Some in the crowd exchanged glances, their faces a mix of surprise and admiration. The thug, momentarily caught off guard by this new challenger, turned his bleary gaze towards the veteran. His anger, previously directed at the guard, now found a new target. "Who do you think you are?" he slurred, taking an unsteady step towards the veteran. The veteran remained unmoved, his eyes locked on the aggressor. "I'm someone who knows that real strength isn't about throwing punches," he said, his voice steady and firm. "It's about knowing when not to." The crowd watched in rapt attention as the confrontation intensified. The thug's face contorted with rage, his body tensing like a coiled spring. But the veteran stood firm, a rock against the storm of the aggressor's volatility. Behind them, the guard remained motionless, but his awareness had clearly heightened. His eyes darted between the veteran and the thug, ready to act if the situation escalated further. "Violence doesn't make you strong," the veteran continued, his words carrying a weight that seemed to resonate with the onlookers. "It makes you weak. It shows you've run out of better options." The thug's expression flickered, a mix of confusion and anger battling across his features. It was clear that he wasn't used to being challenged in this way. He opened his mouth to retort, but for a moment, words seemed to fail him. In that moment of hesitation, something shifted in the atmosphere. The crowd, which had been holding its collective breath, began to murmur. There were nods of agreement, looks of respect directed at the veteran. Even those who had been too afraid to intervene earlier seemed to draw strength from his words. The veteran's intervention had changed the course of events in a way no one had anticipated. What had started as a one-sided confrontation had transformed into a powerful moment of moral clarity. The thug, who had seemed so intimidating just moments ago, now appeared smaller, less certain. But the confrontation was far from over. The thug, his pride wounded and his anger still simmering, seemed to be wrestling with how to respond. His eyes darted between the veteran and the guard, as if weighing his options. The guard, for his part, remained at his post, but his posture had subtly changed. There was a new tension in his stance, a readiness that suggested he was prepared to act if necessary. The veteran's words seemed to have reinforced the guard's resolve, reminding him of the deeper meaning behind his duty. As the standoff continued, the crowd's reaction began to evolve. What had started as fearful silence was now turning into something else. There were whispers of encouragement, nods of support directed at the veteran. Some even began to edge closer, as if drawn by the magnetic pull of his courage. The thug, sensing the shift in the crowd's mood, began to look increasingly isolated. His bravado, which had seemed so intimidating earlier, now appeared hollow in the face of the veteran's quiet strength. The stage was set for a critical moment of decision. The thug stood at a crossroads, his next move poised to define not just the outcome of this confrontation, but perhaps his own character. The veteran, steady and resolute, waited patiently, his presence a silent challenge to choose a better path. In that charged moment, the true nature of strength was being redefined before the crowd's eyes. It wasn't about physical power or intimidation, but about moral courage and the ability to stand firm in the face of aggression. The air crackled with tension as the thug's face contorted with rage. His bloodshot eyes locked onto the veteran who had dared to stand up to him. The plaza fell silent, anticipation hanging heavy in the air. Time seemed to slow as the thug's fist clenched, knuckles turning white with anger. The veteran's calm faltered, his eyes widening as he braced for impact. The crowd watched, horrified, as the thug's arm began its arc. A collective gasp echoed across the plaza. In a blur of motion, the royal guard's hand shot out. With precision, he intercepted the thug's fist mid-swing. The sudden intervention left everyone stunned, the scene frozen for a heartbeat. The thug's face a mixture of surprise and fury, the veteran's eyes wide with relief. With a controlled movement, the guard redirected the thug's energy. He stepped aside, using the attacker's momentum to throw him off balance. The thug stumbled, his bravado crumbling as he fought to stay upright. The guard's intervention was a masterclass in controlled force. His movements, precise and calculated, neutralized the threat without escalation. It was as if he were a human circuit breaker, instantly diffusing the surge of violence before it could spark further. As the thug regained his footing, the dynamic shifted dramatically. The guard now stood between him and the veteran, a living shield of crimson and gold. His posture was relaxed but alert, ready to respond. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Fear and tension gave way to relief and admiration. Murmurs of approval rippled through the onlookers, punctuated by scattered applause. The thug, faced with the full attention of the royal guard, seemed to deflate. His anger evaporated, replaced by uncertainty as he glanced around at the judging eyes of the crowd. In that moment, the true nature of the guard's strength became clear. It was about the moral courage to stand up for what was right, to protect those who needed it, even when duty might have dictated inaction. The guard's actions were a textbook example of appropriate intervention. His response was measured, using only the force necessary to prevent harm and diffuse the situation. As the tension dissipated, the guard remained alert, his eyes scanning for further threats. But his posture softened slightly, signaling that the immediate danger had passed. The thug took a step back, his eyes darting between the guard and the veteran. His half-empty bottle slipped from his fingers, clattering to the ground in a sound that punctuated the end of his tirade. For the veteran, the guard's intervention was more than a physical rescue. It vindicated the values he had spoken about moments before. The guard had demonstrated that true strength lay in the ability to protect and serve with precision and restraint. The crowd began to relax, the tension giving way to shared relief. Some recounted what they had witnessed, while others reached for their phones to share the extraordinary event. The royal guard remained at his post, his demeanor composed as if nothing had happened. But to those who looked closely, there was a subtle change in his bearing, a quiet pride in a duty well performed, a silent acknowledgement of the trust placed in him to protect not just the monuments, but the people around them. The royal guard's unwavering stance had finally broken, and the crowd held its breath in anticipation of what would come next. The guard's grip on the thug's wrist remained firm, a silent testament to years of rigorous training and discipline. As the tension in the air thickened, the guard's lips parted, and a hush fell over the onlookers. "My duty is to protect," the guard's voice rang out, clear and authoritative, his eyes locked with the thug's, unwavering. "That includes protecting the people from threats like you." The thug's face, once contorted with rage, now flickered with uncertainty. His bravado crumbled under the steady gaze of the guard. He squirmed, trying to free his wrist from the iron grip, but to no avail. The realization that he had crossed a line he couldn't uncross dawned on him. Behind the guard, the veteran took a step back. His weathered face showed a mix of relief and gratitude. He nodded slightly, acknowledging the guard's intervention. The crowd, sensing the shift in dynamics, began to murmur their approval. The guard's demeanor remained calm and composed as he continued. "You've threatened these people's safety and disrespected a veteran. That is unacceptable." Each word carried the weight of centuries of tradition and duty. The onlookers, initially frozen in shock, now reached for their phones. The scene unfolding before them was too remarkable not to capture. The clicks of camera shutters and the soft glow of screens added a surreal quality to the moment. The thug's anger, which had been his shield, rapidly gave way to fear. His eyes darted from the guard to the crowd, searching for an escape that wasn't there. In that crucial moment, as the guard broke his stance to intervene, he redefined the concept of duty for all present. It was about protecting the values and people they were sworn to serve, even if it meant stepping outside the bounds of tradition. The crowd's admiration was palpable. What they had witnessed was more than a guard subduing a troublemaker. It was a display of true strength, the kind that comes from discipline, restraint, and a deep sense of responsibility. As the situation de-escalated, the atmosphere began to shift. The tension that had gripped the area slowly dissipated, replaced by a sense of awe and respect. People in the crowd exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of relief and admiration. The guard's actions had not only diffused a potentially dangerous situation, but had also provided a powerful lesson. In a world where aggression often masquerades as strength, the guard had demonstrated that true power lies in control, in knowing when to act, and in standing up for what's right. For many in the crowd, this incident would become a story they'd tell for years to come. It was about seeing firsthand the embodiment of duty, honor, and protection of the vulnerable. As the commotion settled, there was a collective realization that they had witnessed something extraordinary. The guard's intervention had transformed a moment of ugliness into one of inspiration, redefining their understanding of duty and service. The guard's firm grip held the thug in place as an eerie calm settled over the plaza. Palace security arrived swiftly, assessing the situation with military precision. The guard's unwavering stance spoke volumes about his training and resolve. The thug made one last desperate bid for freedom. He jerked suddenly, trying to wrench his arm free. The guard was ready. He pivoted smoothly. In one fluid motion, he maneuvered the thug face down. Threat neutralized. The crowd erupted into cheers. The veteran approached, his eyes meeting the guard's. An unspoken understanding passed between them. A silent acknowledgement of shared values and experiences. Palace security took custody of the subdued thug. His earlier bravado had crumbled, replaced by a look of defeat. The plaza buzzed with excitement as onlookers processed the scene. The veteran stepped forward, addressing the crowd. What we've seen here today is a demonstration of true strength. It's about protecting others and standing up for what's right. His words resonated. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. The thug visibly wilted, the contrast between his earlier aggression and current shame stark. The veteran turned to the guard and extended his hand. "Thank you," he said simply but with deep sincerity. "Your actions today remind us all of the importance of duty and honor." The guard shook the veteran's hand, breaking his stoic demeanor for a moment. This act of mutual respect elicited fresh applause. Many in the crowd were visibly moved, some wiping away tears. As the thug was led away, the incident's impact lingered. The crowd's shift from tension to admiration illustrated how witnessing acts of justice can inspire respect for those who uphold order. The guard's intervention had not only protected the veteran, but also reinforced the community's values of respect and discipline. The psychological impact of this public humiliation on the aggressive individual was evident. His earlier bravado had completely crumbled under the guard's authoritative presence. This moment of public defeat served as a powerful deterrent, not just for the thug himself, but for anyone in the crowd who might have harbored similar aggressive tendencies. As the excitement began to die down, small groups formed among the onlookers, all eagerly discussing what they had witnessed. Many were pulling out their phones, no doubt sharing the event on social media. The incident had transformed from a potential tragedy into a powerful lesson about strength, duty, and community. The plaza, once a stage for confrontation, now buzzed with a renewed sense of security and unity. Passers-by who had stopped to watch now moved on, carrying with them the memory of a moment where justice and respect had prevailed. The guard resumed his post, his posture as steady as ever, a living embodiment of the principles he had so effectively demonstrated. As the buzz of excitement faded, a new tension took hold of the plaza. The guard, who had just subdued a violent aggressor, now faced a different challenge. How would he transition back to his stoic duty? The crowd held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. With fluid precision, the royal guard released his grip on the thug and returned to his post. His movements were measured, each step deliberate. The guard's face remained impassive as he resumed his position, standing tall and proud. His crimson uniform, moments ago a blur of motion, now hung perfectly still. It was as if the confrontation had never happened, yet the air around him crackled with a new energy. The onlookers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of disbelief and admiration. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a display of controlled power that left them questioning their own understanding of strength. The guard's unwavering composure had transformed him from a living statue into a symbol of resilience. As time passed, the crowd's attention remained fixed on the guard. They searched for any sign that the recent events had affected him, but found none. His breathing was steady, his gaze focused ahead. It was a masterclass in self-control, a demonstration of the psychological techniques used to maintain composure under extreme pressure. The veteran, who had been at the center of the confrontation, lingered nearby, his eyes never leaving the guard. His weathered face bore an expression of deep respect, tinged with nostalgia. The guard's actions had rekindled something within him, a reminder of the honor and discipline that had defined his own service. Gradually, the plaza began to return to its normal rhythm. Tourists who had been frozen in place started to move again, forming small groups to discuss what they had witnessed. Their hushed voices carried a newfound reverence for the guard they had once seen as merely a photo opportunity. As the afternoon wore on, the veteran finally moved from his spot. With deliberate steps, he approached the guard once more. Standing before him, the veteran's posture straightened, his chin lifted. Without a word, he raised his hand in a crisp salute. The guard's eyes flickered for just a moment, acknowledging the gesture with the barest of movements. This silent exchange was like a torch passing between generations, illuminating shared values that transcended time and circumstance. The veteran's gratitude was palpable, his respect for the guard's disciplined response evident in every line of his face. The crowd watched this interaction with a mixture of curiosity and emotion, many finding themselves deeply moved by the unspoken connection between the two men. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the plaza, the atmosphere had shifted once again. The initial shock and excitement had given way to a profound sense of reflection. People lingered, reluctant to leave, as if by staying they could hold on to the lessons learned from this unexpected encounter. As the plaza settled into its usual rhythm, the day's events left a lasting impact. The confrontation had become a profound lesson in strength and duty. The guard's actions, blending restraint with decisive intervention, challenged perceptions of power. It wasn't about brute force, but the courage to stand firm in adversity. As shadows lengthened across the plaza, onlookers pondered, what does it truly mean to stand for something? The day had shown that sometimes the most powerful stance is one of quiet resolve and unwavering principle. The guard's actions spoke volumes about respect, duty, and true strength, leaving a new perspective on what it means to be truly powerful.